God's presence breaks out of the temple. What happened when Christ died? And what did that veil separate? It separated the physical realm from the spiritual realm. Guys, this was just mind-altering to me. And Josephus talks about it, Philo talks about it, a lot of your early biblical interpreters, Edersheim talks about it in his book on the temple. The veil rending too was just as much an expression, God saying, I am breaking out of this joint. This place can't hold me. In other words, there was no longer a separation between what we can see and the spiritual. The spiritual was opened up. And from that point onward, the temple is not a building, it is the people of God. Now, we could stand back there in the Old Testament looking at Solomon's temple. We'll do this and then we'll close. We're out of time. We could stand back there in the Old Testament at the dedication of Solomon's temple and say, the temple is the dwelling place of God, and we would be absolutely correct. Today, we can stand and look at the church of God and say, the temple is the dwelling place of God, and we are still absolutely correct. The difference is, no longer is it a building over in Jerusalem. It is the people of God, and God has left the local place, the physical place, but He still lives in His temple. The difference is, that's who we are. Time and again, we saw it as we've been going through 1 Peter, we see it all the way through the New Testament. The church is said to be the temple of God. And God still lives in His temple. He hasn't left His temple. The temple has just simply become His people. Before, in the old, the presence of the Spirit was confined to those people who were responsible for leading and guiding and carrying on the work and the purposes of God. And that's who the Spirit of God indwelled. That's who the Spirit of God indwells today too. It's just that it's changed from a select few to all of the people of God. Because all of the people of God are now the temple of God. Do you see how this thing changes? How it grows and just explodes on our minds? It's not that God's purpose changed in any way. It's just that His purpose finally comes to culmination. And this is one of the things I love so much about Dr. Beale. He brings out a point looking at Hebrews and some of the other passages that talk about the fact of the people of God being the temple of God. And he said, when you get a New Testament grasp of how the New Testament defines the temple of God, you realize the New Testament looks back at the physical temple and says, that is the image, the type, the church, the people of God are the reality. That was the image. This is the reality. But what do we want to do so many times? We want to make the image the reality and us the allegory or the image. We've got it backwards. As the temple, we are the reality. The book of Hebrews expressly says that. All those things were types and shadows. The reality is now. But we get that completely backwards. And when we do, we miss the whole purpose of God. We miss why it is that the Holy Spirit indwells every individual. Because every individual is part of the temple. We are, what did we just find out there in the book of Peter, 1 Peter, not too long back? We are living stones being built up into what? A holy temple. Now, did Peter mean that? Or was that just allegorical? I'm saying no. That's not allegorical at all. That's reality. The physical building back there in the Old Testament, that was the allegory. That was the word picture expressed in a physical thing that we could see. But it was always, he told Moses, when Moses was building the tabernacle, what did he say? Build it exactly according to this plan. Why? Because it was according to the real tabernacle in the heavenly places. And it's right there. Because they were looking. Yep. Yeah. It's staggering, but people, I think that's one of the issues we got to grapple with, is the proper way of looking at this thing so that we come away with the right understanding. And I'll tell you, when you do, there is a richness to what you see that is almost staggering to realize how it changes your perspective and how most of the New Testament makes so much more sense when you finally start seeing it. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you what's even more interesting, if you go back, and especially if you read like the works of Josephus and some of these other men that, and by the way, Josephus was actually a Jewish priest. But it's amazing that even some of these priests understood these things from this perspective. He gives one of the most amazing explanations of the temple and what everything represented, how everything was supposed to be viewed, that you find anywhere. And Alfred Edersheim, if you've not read his 3 books, you need to get Alfred Edersheim's books. He is a Jew who was converted, who spent the rest of his life basically doing the same thing the Apostle Paul did in a lot of respects, going back and looking at the Old Testament from the perspective of Jesus Christ. And he wrote some of the best books on the Old Testament. He wrote one on the temple, he wrote one on the life and times of Jesus Christ, and he wrote another one. I can't think of the name of the third one. But you need to get those sometime. Not saying I agree with everything they say, but there's gold mines of information. But guys, we're going to dive off into this next week and really start to look at it. And I know we didn't get finished with everything that I wanted to for this week, but I think we kind of got the gist of it anyway. So we're going to dive off into that next week and just take a look at this understanding of how to look at the Scriptures in light of what the temple and was signifying